They don't really believe in the product or service they're offering. They don't really want to be successful. So they sit there and they pad their stats saying they're busy. They got lots of stuff going on. And then on the flip side of it, you now have this new idea of how do we cut out all the humans in this equation? Like, has the industry gone nuts?
Welcome back to another episode of Outbound Sales No Fluff, the podcast by Ronan Pessar and Ryan Reister. We are the Outbound Operators, and I am excited about this episode. We're going to get into three topics. The first topic is the no-show. What to do with the no-show, what should be done with the no-show, and how to follow up with it. The second topic is actually going to be one that a lot of you might struggle with. Call reluctance and the fear of cold calling, how to overcome it. What our tips and our own experiences have taught us along the way. And the last one is, what is the role in leadership when it comes to artificially inflated pipelines? And why is there responsibility being held right now by leaders as well as the reps when it comes to growing revenue? So stay tuned for this one. If you enjoy this episode, hit the subscribe button, follow along for more. And Ryan, let's dive right into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So this came up today in our daily coaching. By the way, if you want to learn more about the coaching, let us know. We have Call Blitz community, which you can learn from Ryan for an hour every week and do live calling with him for an hour. We also have premium coaching is every day for an hour. This came up in coaching today.
Premium.
Premium. It just means more of our time.
Is that what that means?
Something like that, right? This is premium coffee. It just means it costs me more money.
Fair enough.
So what came up in coaching today, Ryan? Tell the people.
It came up in conversation, but talk about no-shows. And this is a topic that really frustrates me when you're a sales development rep working at a company. You do the work to activate your market. That's the goal, right? You make a list, you call the list, you get them generally interested, you build some intrigue, gather some information, or you get what's the last one? I'm like intent. There's some intent here, and in this case, there's interest, right? They said they were interested in taking some time at another date in the future to meet with a professional salesperson to continue the conversation, and then something happens. There's a few things that happen here, and we should talk about this. Maybe we deep dive into why some no-shows are happening. But the point of this is when sales reps are like, hey, they no-showed, can you call them back and reschedule them? It's like they completely like miss the point of how to build momentum in this process and really differentiate yourself as an organization, go to market via outbound, right? What value does a SDR, BDR rep that's not going to take the meeting provide in calling back someone that didn't show up to a scheduled interaction? There's none. All they're doing is calling to see if they can get them back on the counter. This person clearly is probably busy. Maybe there was a technical issue. It doesn't really matter, but they express some interest. The next conversation should be with the professional salesperson to continue the momentum in the conversation. And at the worst case scenario, actually determine the hypothesis most of these sales reps have of, were they even interested? Maybe they just said they wanted to take a meeting to get you off the phone. Well, why don't you call them back and see if that was the case, right? It would take you 3 minutes to figure that out. 2 minutes of that is just picking up the fucking dialer and making the call in the first place. The other minute is when they picked up. And if they weren't generally interested to continue the conversation, you would know. The answer would be solved. There would be no more arguments over this no-show stuff. So the no-shows kill me because reps are sitting around waiting for people to come to their calendar, and then they complain about a no-show and they never make any calls. The best time for calling back no-shows, which are activated leads, is when a no-show occurs. First of all, you should be calling them in the first place, which most reps won't do, right? 3-5 minutes into the meeting, they're not on your link yet. Pick up the damn phone. If this was generated from a phone call in the first place, there's probably a 1 in 3 shot they're going to pick up, even if they weren't intending to make the meeting, because they pick up at a 30% connect rate, right? So there's a 1 in 3 shot they pick up, but also they may just have been running a little bit late or whatever it might be. You catch them on the phone, you get them back into the conversation. Now, if they don't make the meeting, let them know you're there with a voicemail, send an email, wait, call them back one more time, put it in your no-shows. Now, if that person didn't show, what do? Go to my other no-shows and make some calls. It's wild what happens when you finally get a salesperson to do this work, which you always have to freaking pull their hair to do it. But they'll finally, if we're sitting in a session with them, say, hey, why don't we there was a no-show, it's cool. Let's just pull up the no-shows, make some calls.
Yeah.
Every single time It's within two
Yeah.
or three dials, they get one more person on the phone, and they're either rescheduling that person or go right into an unscheduled introduction.
Yeah, and if
Every
you've been
time.
following along, this is a good follow-on video to our video about activations, because a no-show is essentially an activated lead. It's someone who showed interest and intent at some point in the past. So what we do with activated leads is you have the best trained person, the sales rep, call that prospect back and have an unscheduled introductory call on a cold call, or call them back in this case and try to reschedule it. But if you're going to get the person on the phone anyway, might as well go into discovery. I have a short story of this happening actually in our world not too long ago. We were working a deal with a very promising AI company, and the COO, who was the main point of contact, canceled meeting 5 minutes before, essentially no showing it. Um, and
Well,
now
if he canceled, it's not a no show.
Okay, canceled it. Same concept though. So what I did is he sent something like, "Hey, we got to find some time. This isn't going to work for me." I just called him and we ended up having a 12-minute conversation right then and there that allowed us to move the deal forward. For the rest of that deal, what I kept doing was I would call him in between steps to keep moving the ball forward. Another first down, another first down. Now we're in the red zone. Now we scored a touchdown and we closed the client over a month ago, and now they're one of
Hold on,
our.
hold on. You didn't like go to email and see if you could get it rescheduled. You're like, oh, the person literally responded right now. Why don't I just get that rescheduled? And then, oh, by the way, while I have them, sometimes we don't need to sit down and have our bullshit Zoom meeting because it's an intro call anyway. Like, let's just get right into it while I have you. Like, blah 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 blah. Cool. Like, it makes sense to move it forward. Or, by the way, maybe it was the opposite of that, where they're trying to push it around. This is the one that kills me. Someone that keeps pushing, keeps pushing, keeps pushing. You keep going to email, you keep kick it out, kick it out, kick it out. You finally get them, and they're too small. They're not qualified. Whatever, right? Could have just solved that 3 months ago instead of continuing to kick
Yes,
the ball down the
exactly.
field. Um,
I think there's a lesson here, which is you want to accelerate your time to decision as a sales rep. And what I mean by that is you want to get as fast as you can to the this is still qualified and in my pipeline, or this is disqualified and kick it out of my pipeline. But this limbo stage is where so much time gets wasted, at least for the sales reps, where you're just following up with deals that could have been disqualified and were realistically dead a long time ago, and now you're wasting your time following up with them instead of pursuing better opportunities, better prospects. It's the same mindset. And actually, Ryan, I want to go back to something you were saying before, but you didn't get into the detail on. You said that, it's like pulling teeth with sales reps to do this, to call the no-shows back. Why do you think that is?
Same reason why it's difficult to get anyone to make any calls. Number one, they fear rejection. That's a big one. The second piece is there's like this sense of entitlement. They
Mm.
feel like calling is below them. This is something that comes up often around this status creation concept. I'm of lower status if I have to call the person in the sales process, right? This is why people use like gatekeepers and admins to schedule. They want to look like they have status of authority, and this is a tactic, right? Oren Klaff teaches this as a methodology for mostly like big and like deals, like buying and selling companies, this type of thing. You want to kind of maintain these statuses, which, give or take, there's a potato, there's a tomato. You can call it a few different ways. It's a way of doing things, but most sellers are using that as an excuse because of one. So, it's not actually the status thing, it's the fear of rejection concept.
Mm.
They say it's below them, yet they just don't want to do it because they don't want to get the rejection. They fear the no, man. That's the number one reason why cold callers, let alone the AEs, don't make enough calls because they can't get past the 2 or 3 rejections that they get in a day. It kills their ego and they're done. Right? It shakes them, rattles them to the core. They cannot handle a couple people saying no to them. It's just very difficult.
Well,
Um,
on the chance that someone watching this is identifying like that, what do you advise to people who want to get past that have the interest, intent, motivation to want to move past that fear? How can they?
they have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, do I want to win? Do I want to be a winner? You can look at every single piece of motivational content that exists on this fucking planet. Right? And I listen to this stuff and I send some of this stuff to you from time to time, right? From the David Goggins of the world these days to the to the Tony Robbins, to whatever. It's like anything worth doing is going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard in your mind. The reality is, it's not that fucking hard. You just got to do it. But once you get past that fear, anxiety, and actually want it, you want to be a winner and just do the fucking thing.
Yeah. I like to talk
It
about
just
this
gets easier.
in a way where, in my own experience, the very first time I ever cold called was in 2015. And I was a new SDR at a marketing technology company in New York City that had raised a ton of money on a Series D. And I had like a almost 4 week long onboarding before even picking up the phone. Then the very first time I'm picking up the phone, I had all of these ideas already about like what was going to happen. And there was so much pressure on that one call that by the time the first prospect answered, I was completely stunned and blacked out. And I was just like, hi, my name is Smartling. I'm calling from Ronen. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm Ronen. I'm calling from Smartling. And then I
Yeah.
was like, and I just hung up.
Yeah.
That
That
was my first call. And this was in an open office. There were no walls. It
yeah.
was a giant square of an office. Everyone heard me. My buddy Christian to my right starts laughing his ass off. And for the next 3 months, he goes, "Hey, Smartlink from Ronan, how's it going?" So I took a lot of flack for that. But
Yep.
I want to actually share the second half of that story, which was I went from that to not having that fear nearly as much. At 99% went away, not 100%, because there's still this tiny little bit that was always there, but it went away after a 2 week period occurred where my CMO challenged the entire SDR team. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to give anyone who can meet this challenge $250 on an Amazon gift card." What's the challenge? Two things. One, minimum 100 dials a day. I was punching numbers in manually off of a Salesforce lead list. And two, what was the second challenge? Oh, it was simply a quantity spiff. Whoever makes the most. So there was a minimum, and then the most wins. I was very competitive, so I made like 140 to 150 dials a day manually, while also doing other things like mail merges that never worked and stuff like that. 2 weeks through that whole spiff, which I ended up winning. The only thing that I really walked away with, other than the $250 gift card, was I realized suddenly that it wasn't as scary. And so for me, it was about getting the repetition, the reps in. Anyone who's an athlete can definitely relate to this. I think it comes back to like when you practice the move over and over and over and over, there's something that clicks in you at some point in time so that when you're in the game, you don't have to rely as much on like, I got to think through what's happening. It becomes automatic. That's
Yeah.
the same thing with cold calling. You do it enough, you build the reps, your tolerance for it will grow and your fear will shrink. And it might get to a point where the fear doesn't disappear ever, but it could go from you're just struggling to make 20, 30 calls to it's your first two calls and then you're back and you're good to go. And you just got to get over the hump every day for that first one or two. And so honestly, I like the saying from Stephen Pressfield, a guy who wrote the book, The War of Art, which I love. He says, "Put your ass where your heart wants to be. If you really want to be there, put your butt in the seat and do the work. Nothing
Yep.
will beat that. If you're a writer, if you're a cold caller, if you're trying to get a six pack like Ryan, you got to show up. That's rule number one. And don't pass rule number one looking for rule number two until you've done rule number one. Show up every day. Nothing beats repetition and actually doing it.
Yeah.
That's
And I
my
mean,
little soapbox on the whole confidence thing.
well, it thanks for the deviation there. We're getting back to activations, but you're spot on with complete that. That's why for me it used to be dials. Dials don't fucking matter. It does come down to daily completions into your market. And when you actually focus on a completion being the outcome, then you can get away from this is a big part of why we run this model, not only from the value of information in the market and, everything's going to happen to follow up anyway, but every single outcome is still a success. There was a coaching I used to do way back in the day. One year I did it with the Southwestern Consulting, and there was this guy that had this concept called the nose will make you stronger. And he would talk about doing like 10 push-ups or 10 pull-ups or something. Every time you got a no, you would do like some sort of workout, Nose will make you stronger. I like that concept. There's lots of ways you can get around it. That doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, like if you want to be successful in sales, you have to make the fucking calls. Like period.
Do the
Um,
hard thing.
it,
Do
it's
the
the hard
hard
it's
thing.
the hard thing. And so getting back to the why reps aren't doing this, this is my conspiracy theory. Okay, so this is my conspiracy theory about sales leadership.
I love your
Because
conspiracy theories. You got the best ones.
most reps join companies where they don't really believe they're going to be they don't believe they're going to be successful. They don't believe they're
Mm.
going to hit the on target. They're joining for the base. That's why they negotiate the higher bases and all sort of stuff. So they join, they collect the money, they hope they might get something, but they don't really care about it. They're not trying to hit their number. They're just there for the paycheck, and they do whatever they can to maintain. And so in sales and sales leadership, to maintain for as long as you possibly can, you want to have a big fat pipeline. You want to have a big fat pipeline, and you want to tell people like this one's
You're
going to be
busy.
coming.
Yeah.
This one's going to be coming. I'm busy. I'm working on proposals. I got RFPs. I got this other shit that I'm doing. This busy work. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And then it never comes. They want to have this big fat thing that's not real. Right. And if you look at every organization, that's the problem. My conspiracy is this big problem with this big fat pipeline and pipeline coverage. But the reality is your funnel, if you have a really healthy sales process, getting back to a point you made earlier, the deals that really close at a high likelihood to close move very fast, right? They might take long up top, but once they get into the real stage of I'm ready to go, they move fast. So it's not this big fat
They
funnel.
move.
It looks
Yeah.
like a nail. It looks like a nail, right? Big fat on the top, lots of
Super
conversations,
thin.
lots of things happening at the top as you're working your market, and then as soon as it's ready to go, it starts through. You know, I my conspiracy theory is that like most sales reps and sales leaders, they don't really believe in the product or service they're offering. They don't really want to be successful, so they sit there and they pad their stats saying they're busy. They got lots of stuff going on. They'll take a lot of new business opportunities at the top, but they're never working the middle of their funnel. This is why buckets exist. This is why you when reps finally understand this, you're supposed to focus on the stuff closest to revenue first. You work it backwards. You don't work the top. See this with cold callers, right? We get them in, they start making calls, they get that priority list, they don't touch the priority list. You know you don't have a successful rep when they won't make the follow-up calls on the priority list, right? These are where the money is made. The fat stacks are in the circle backs. Reps won't make those calls. They want to. There's a hope in their prayer. There's this thing that maybe is there, but it also helps them feel like they're making progress. And maybe they don't intentionally do this, but they don't personally believe in their ability to get things done, and so they want to over-index on this stuff that's in the middle because it's fluffy and it feels good and it's keeping them in their job for guess what, 12 to 15 months, which is it's probably closer to like 9 to 12 months these days, the average tenure of most reps. They will not stick around for much longer than that because they're probably going to get fired. And the ones that also go and take jobs other places sooner rather than later, more often than not these days, is because they don't believe in their pipeline, right? If you did believe in your pipeline, it takes a long time to build a pipeline. The most success I ever had in a seat as a sales rep, which is really kind of last time I was in a seat as a sales rep, was when I was at eSearch Vision. I worked my way from SDR to sales rep to eventually director of sales, and I was left and started my first company, came back as a managing director. So in total, I was at that company for almost 4 years, 3 years, a break to start my recruiting firm, came back. It was so much easier in year 2, 3, and then when I came back, because I had this massive pipeline of all these people I worked with in the past. I have to communicate with in the past. I know I can get them on the phone. They were aware of me, etc. From that point on, as I went into the other startups and I was the head of sales and I'm building teams, the biggest challenge I saw was it was always building from scratch. And now as an entrepreneur, and I'm always helping all these companies go to market, no one gives it enough time to like really sit in the seat and really prospect and really build business. If you look at some of the top producers at a lot of these organizations, if they can actually maintain, they're really making their money in year 2, year 3, year 4.
Yeah.
But the average tenure is like 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, if they can get over that initial hump. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild how short the typical rep survives at a tech company in these AE roles. I've seen it too at all the companies I've worked for, but there's one that comes to mind where the turnover for the newest reps was always high, but once you made it past a certain point, you were typically around for a while to come.
Well, because it's a lot easier to be successful. And so this conspiracy theory again becomes I want this big fat pipeline to look like I'm busy, make an excuse to say I have stuff to do, but they don't make the calls that are that are important. It's that middle of the funnel push that's like what's in, what's out. And you got to push it up to the fat part or down.
Ryan, you also can't entirely blame the sales reps because a lot of this comes from short-sighted leadership that is focused on how do we get revenue right now? And so they hire a rep already planning. I've seen it already planning that the rep will contribute that quarter that they show up.
Oh
the
yeah,
next
you see it all
quarter
the
that
time.
they show
Yeah.
up. It's part of the math. They math it in. It's ridiculous. I remember once asking my CRO, how do you have this plan that you've just shared with the board that includes people who aren't hired yet? And he goes, because we're behind on hiring. I was like, yeah, no, I understand, but that's not my question. Where's it going to come from?
Yeah.
And he goes, this is how it works. You plan it in with the headcount, and the headcount is responsible for delivering.
Well,
It just
yeah,
has to get done like
and
magic.
that's
And then the result, it's always
yeah.
the same.
What was the average tenure? What's the average tenure of that guy's career?
Yeah, it was not so great. I think it was like a year and a half,
Exactly.
about
Exactly.
18 months at all of his stints, except for the one I worked with him at.
18 months, 18 months. And I mean, I don't know if like there was acquisitions and stuff occurring in those cases because like, I have 18 month stints in companies, but my companies are getting acquired, so it's like new business, kind of thing. But like, there's a problem when that's occurring, and this is the problem with the SDR shops and all these other things. Leadership is like, again, it's a headcount problem. Oh, the rep didn't work, I'm going to fire you. It's a tool problem. It's an agency problem. They didn't get me my number. Some of them are like literally just trying to pad the stats. But the you're right. Some of this stuff is not on the rep. There's also leadership that is trying to force these like commits. Like, what are you going to commit? What are you going to commit to your forecast? I got to commit a
Oh, I've
number,
seen that too.
and it's
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 horrible.
it's like, getting back to my point, that causes a problem because now you have reps that are not actually talking about deals that are going to close because they sandbag is this term in the market, and then they also will either undercommit or overcommit, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's a big problem because most people don't give sales enough time, and at the end of the day, that's what creates all of this negativity in the market with really shitty salespeople, because this high pressure closing tactics, offers, blah blah blah, it doesn't serve
It doesn't,
anybody.
and
It
it
doesn't
doesn't
serve
work.
anybody. What
It,
it kind of does in the sense of companies are growing their number, but it doesn't work long term in any of these situations, right? They're bringing on customers that are not going to be a good fit, right? Because what happens is they close on a discount, that customer gets onboarded, eventually the support leader who's supposed to service this client realizes there's not enough fucking margin to support the person in the first place. And it's like, that's a shitty deal. They're a year on a discount. Like, why are they here in the first place? They churn out. It's not a good fit. There's all sorts of problems with that. Like, the whole industry needs a massive reset. It's this crazy growth at all cost concept that never made sense. And then on the flip side of it, you now have this new idea of like, how do we cut out all the humans in this equation? Like, has the industry gone nuts? And in the middle of all of this are the people that are sitting in the roles to produce, who won't pick up the phone and actually like move deals along. Everything's broken. It's all broken. And going back to the whole point of this episode, which is activated lead being a no-show being an activated lead. If you just use this methodology where you make a list, you call the list, you follow up, eventually the stuff that's ready to go and you have a nice fat top of your nail funnel, not your big fat funnel, but the top of the nail funnel, stuff will start coming through when the time's right. Right. Then you mentioned the example of you making the calls along the way that builds momentum in the deal. But to kind of get back to our actual main point here, which is no shows being activations, and the problem that sellers have right now in the market is the sales reps don't want to talk to anyone until they're ready to buy, and the buyers don't want to talk to any sales reps because they're not helpful. They don't give them
no,
any, they don't do anything of value
they're
in the
they're
conversation.
order takers. They just process paperwork and then send follow-up emails and ask questions that are related to the seller's discovery process, but not related to the buyer's world.
They don't have anything of value to bring to that conversation, and that's why they're not doing the follow-up. They want people to show up, ready to look at their whatever the fuck presentation or demo, and then buy. And so that's the challenge. I guess it's number 3 in the why they don't follow up. 1, their fear of rejection. 2, they don't want to get to the no, right? They're afraid of the no in their pipeline. And then the last thing is they really just don't know what to say. Like, they don't have anything to say besides let me show you some stuff, which isn't very valuable to anybody, which is why we go all the way back to the leadership at these organizations thinking, well, can't we just have AI do this? I was literally just on a cold call in coaching for Call Blitz, reached a sales leader who's saying like, hey, 5 years ago, this has been a thing. We had a big SDR shop, we did all this other stuff, but now we're getting to this point where we're looking at AI agents for all the inbound. Most of the stuff we're closing is inbound. We think agents can do that now, and we don't want to spiff them for that. So like, it, it's like kind of crazy to think about leadership looking at you who are supposed to be this value added resource in the middle of this value chain. You're not doing anything. And this goes back to the binary principle. Noah Goldman never released his book, but the general concept is this: the future of sales is going to move to a buy button. Okay. And you, as a professional sales rep, have only two roles if you want to survive. One is to help with selection, and the other is implementation. If you can't help your market actually learn something about what you do that a bot or AI or a landing page or a website can't do, you're going to be replaced. Okay. You got to stay above the API. And then once they've actually intended to purchase, they've actually made the purchase. If you can't actually make them be successful with their purchase, if AI and bots and videos and all this other stuff can do it without you, you're gone. Okay. And we see this in every role. It's not just sales, right? We see it in operations. I have conversations all the time where it's like, oh, I just want to automate this. It's like, you realize that all the things you're saying you want this to do means you don't have a job. Like, what are you going to do if this is all perfect and automated? Right? Can it just be this AI in this script? Okay, yeah, I guess it can, but then what's your job, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Man, another banger, Ryan. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe, drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned. We're going to be coming back with another episode every day during the week. That's what we do here. Again, I'm Ronen Passar. With me is Ryan Reiser. We're the Outbound Operators. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Peace.